Landon here again, and the Twilight Cup is coming up, and I'm super excited to share this with you. I know there are a couple of changes with the Pokemon. I sort of started preparing this before the changes happen, but looking at the changes, I'm confident the top 10 that is in this video are still very relevant. So here we go. So here's an infographic of my top 10. You've got the tanks in the middle, which are Umbreon and Azumarill, and you've got its hard counters, which are the poison and the dark types, such as Skuntank. You've got Alolan Muck, but I'm not featuring those, so I'm just going to choose some of the top picks because there's so many that you can use. And then you've got the counter for the counter, which are Toxicroak and Nidoqueen. Basically, they would destroy the poison dark types with the ground moves. And the interesting about the Twilight Cup is that it's not just paper, scissors, rock, because there are a whole bunch of Pokemon that you can use that will actually be good against multiple matchups, such as Venusaur will be able to completely destroy Azumarill. It doesn't have too bad of a matchup against some of the dark and poison type, and it can actually potentially beat Umbreon as well, and we're going to go over that in a second. So to kick off, we got to look at some of the lessons we learned with the Boulder Cup. So first one is, why was Skarmory such a king? You know, TDO is king, total damage output. And the reason why is you have to look at the basics of the Pokemon. And the first thing that we're going to look at is base stats. As you can see, the proportion of the stats is heavily in defense, and that's why Skarmory was so tanky. Now, secondly, it's got very good moveset as well. Sky Attack is very good charge move for the damage output in proportion to the energy that it requires. And then thirdly, of course, you got to see its typing. It's only vulnerable to electric and fire, and it's got a whole bunch of resistance. So that's why Skarmory was such a king in the Boulder Cup. Now, the second lesson that we learned from the Boulder Cup is that there is a place for the hard counters. And so if you look at Steelix was one of the hard counters for Skarmory. It actually didn't do any super effective damage, but what it did have was even higher defense than the Skarmory, and it would outcrunch the Skarmory quite easily. Typing was the worst thing about the Steelix, is it was basically weak against fighting and ground, which we saw a whole lot on the field. Melmetal was a good hard counter as well. You have to play these quite well. You have to put them in a very good lineup where you could try and get rid of the counters for these first, which was quite hard. I mean, people were running Marshtomp and Wishcash, so you've also got two Pokemon that's potential threat for your one counter. But there is a place for the hard counters. And the third thing that we learned from the Boulder Cup is that, well, you've got counter for the counter, which is Medicham. It's a massive counter for Steelix and Melmetal. But the most important thing about the Medicham doing so well in the Boulder Cup is that it dealt neutral damage to majority of everything. Even Skarmory, even though it's weak against Skarmory, if your Medicham can get 2 dynamic punch off on a Skarmory, it pretty much takes it out. So dealing that neutral damage, I think, is going to be very important in the Twilight Cup as well. So how we're going to do this is we're going to look at each of these top 10 Pokemon's base stats, its moveset, its typing, and some of the matchup that it will be good or bad against. Start off with the Azumarill. As you can see, Azumarill is going to be a tank for this cup, and it's got a massive distribution on defense and stamina. It's going to get close to 225 HP because it's going to be capped at 1500 CP. The cool thing about the Azumarill is that it has Ice Beam and Play Rough, which are 2-bar charge moves, and those are very good against majority of the field. Now, the more important thing about Azumarill is its typing. It's going to be resistant to Dark, Bug, Fighting, but it will be weak against Poison, which is what we're going to see in majority of the field, so that is one thing that we have to be careful about. But if you play a second Pokemon like Toxicroak, which would be a very good cover for Azumarill. So if we look at the field, what does it actually beat? Now, As you can see, it beats Nidoking. You're going to see, I definitely think you're going to see Nidoking, Golbat, Drapion, Crobat, Umbreon, Raticate. Nidoqueen, it just loses if it's got Sludge Wave, but I believe if you have a shield, then it would definitely destroy Nidoqueen as well. Now the second one that we're going to look at is the Umbreon. The Umbreon does really well because of its defense stat. As you can see, it's heavily skewed in the defense. Very similar to the Skarmory, except it's even got lower attack, so it can actually have more in stamina. It's going to be able to out-tank a lot of the field. And with the moveset, you definitely want something with the Last Resort, because if it's just got the double dark moves, as you would if you evolved it right now, it's not going to be very effective, because it's just you're going to be facing a lot of dark Pokemon. Now the third thing that we're going to look at is its typing. So pretty standard, it's single dark typing. It's going to be weak against the Toxicroak counter, and it's going to be weak against Play Rough. So we're going to be mindful of that. So we're going to look at why we use Bubble over Rock Smash really quick. And as you can see, it's about the energy gain. So let's have a look at Rock Smash over here. It's got a 2.33 EBT. EPT stands for energy per turn. Now the fast moves are based on turns. Each turn is 0.5 seconds. So each fast move is between 0.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. And if it's got a duration of 3, it means it will last for 1.5 seconds. And this is the energy per turn for Rock Smash. And if you look at Bubble has an energy per turn of 3.6. It's got the same duration, but it's got a far more superior energy gain. And if you look at damage per turn, the Rock Smash does have a slightly higher at 3, but Bubble is 2.6, which is not too bad as well. But if you can get more Ice Beam, Play Rough off, that's going to be quite crucial for your match. Dark Poison type, you've got Skuntank. That's my preferred option between the 3 choice of Drapion, Alola Muck, and Skuntank. It's got pretty good base stats. As you can see, it's skewed in the stamina, but it does have a slightly higher attack, so it does lower its defense. But however, it does out-tank its sort of mirror match for other Dark Poison types. It has access to Flamethrower, which would be able to deal neutral damage in that matchup. Its typing is what's insane about the Dark Poison type, and that's why it's going to be a preferred choice in this cup. As you can see, it's only vulnerable to ground, so it's very important that you try to have some coverage there using something like Toxicroak, which we're going to cover off. It does resist against Umbreon, the ghost types, the grass types, as well as itself poison. So it's going to be something that you need to watch out for, the Dark Poison type. Now, if you look at its matchup, a Poison Jab Flamethrower actually pick up quite a bit of the Pokemon on the field. Most of the Poison type, as you can see. It does, however, lose to Drapion, but it's quite interesting because if we use the Poke Battler, it does lose to the Drapion Equitail, but on PV Poke, you can see that Skuntank would just out-tank Drapion just slightly. So yeah, definitely do some playtesting. But the reason why I would pick the Skuntank is because of its fast move, because it has access to Poison Jab, whereas I feel this is going to be slightly better than Infestation, as you can see. So let's have a look. So Poison Jab over here gives you 3 and 3.5 damage per turn. Infestation is 2 and 3.6. So the overall score is 10.5 for the Poison Jab, whereas Infestation is 7.3. Now I think there's still a place for Infestation. As you can see, I picked Swalot, and one of the main reasons why I picked Swalot is, well, its base stats. Its base stats is amazing. It's got very high defense and stamina, so it will give you a good total damage output. Interesting thing about Swalot is that the second charge move only requires 10,000, so that's why I chose Swalot as one of the top 10s. It has Infestation, slightly better than Rock Smash, But what's interesting is that it's got Ice Beam. Ice Beam is going to be good counter for the Golbat and any of the flying moves. And then it's got Sludge Bomb as well. I think it's not bad as well. So without the Dark type, it is vulnerable against Psychic, but it does have all the upside of being a Poison type. And if you look at the matchups for Swalot, it's pretty good as well. So it does out-tank a lot of the other Poison types, such as Alolan Muck, the Golbat, the Skuntank, and then you also got the Drapion as well. So it does beat other Dark Poison type. And the cool thing is that it also out-tanks the Raticate, and that's something we need to watch out for, because the Raticate will be played with the second charge move being only 10,000, and it's got pretty good base stats as well. So looking at the counters for the counters, you've got Toxicroak as the #1 candidate. Its base stat not that good for PvP. It does have a skewed in attack. Its defense is going to be around that 80 mark at 1500 CP, which is actually quite low. What that means is it's going to be very flaky, so you got to be really careful with your Toxicroak. But it does have very good moveset in this cup. So you can see it's got counter and Poison Jab, Sludge Bomb, Dynamic Punch, and the best thing about it is it's got Mud Bomb, which is going to do very good damage against the Poison type. And from the last cup, we know that Mud Bomb charges up super fast, and paired with counter, it's just going to be insane. Now, the typing for Toxicroak, it is weak against itself, but it's very vulnerable to Psychic as well. It's got the double weakness, so if there's someone playing the Venomoth, but I don't think it's necessary, you can just play a flying type like Golbat, which will do the job. And I would probably play Sludge Bomb over Dynamic Punch because it's going to have more coverage, and if you can get a surprise Sludge Bomb off on the Azumarill before your Toxicroak dies, it's going to be pretty good as well. Now the second one that we're going to look at is the Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is pretty good. It's not like handsome stats, but it's very well balanced. It does have really well balanced base stats. The interesting about the Nidoqueen is that it's got Stone Edge and Earthquake, which is going to destroy the Golbats and the other Poison Dark types. It is a Poison ground. It's going to be weak against Ice, so Azumarill is going to do really well against it because it's going to run Bubble and Ice Beam. But the Nidoqueen will be very good matchup for a lot of the field as well. And I would prefer it over Nidoking just because it's got slightly better moveset. Now, if you look at counter, why we would use counter is because it's one of the best fast moves. As you can see, it's got damage per turn is 4 and its EPT is 3.5, giving it a score of 14. Oddballs of this cup. So first of all, we've got Golbat. This is actually really good. It's got pretty balanced stats, very similar to the Nidoqueen. It would be a slightly preferred choice over the Crobat. And the reason why is two things. One, base stats are slightly better. Secondly, wing attack is better than Air Slash as a charge move. As you can see over here, I'm going to show you. So Air Slash is 3 damage per turn and 3 energy per turn as well. Whereas wing attack is just slightly better on the energy per turn, and you're going to be able to get more charge moves off. The typing, it's going to be resistant against poison, obviously, which is going to be great. It is going to be weak against ice as it is flying, and then it's going to be destroyed for Stone Edge as well because of Nidoqueen. So the Golbat has a lot of positive matchup just using Shadow Ball. So the Shadow Ball, even though it's not going to do super effective damage, it's still going to do more damage than the Air Cutter, so it's a preferred moveset. As you can see, it is actually quite good against majority of the field, and it doesn't actually lose to Azumarill by a whole lot, so it's definitely worthwhile to consider the Golbat. Now secondly, we have Grimer. Grimer, the reason why we would consider this is because it's the second Pokemon that has access to Mud Bomb. Its stats are not too great. It's got more defense than a Toxicroak at 100% IV, but it does have close to 200 HP, which is the good thing about it. You can probably run a Mud Slap or Poison Jab, up to you, but I think I would prefer, if I was to run a Grimer, I would use the double ground moves of Mud Slap and Mud Bomb. And then you've also got access to Sludge Bomb as well, which would be able to stand up against Azumarill. Looking at the Grimer matchups, as you can see, it will beat Nidoking, Toxicroak, the Drapion, the Skuntank, obviously the Alolan Muck and Swalot as well. And then it does have a chance against Tentacruel as long as you have a shield available to shield against one of its big charge moves. And then it's going to do quite well with the Poison Jab. With Sludge Bomb, you're going to be able to go against the... not much. Next up we have Venusaur. Venusaur I would definitely play if I have access to a Frenzy Plant one. Its base stats are not too bad, and with Frenzy Plant it's actually one of the highest DPS grass moves. It's definitely good to have on the team because it's got very positive matchup against a lot of the field. It is weak against flying. It's going to lose to your Golbat and then your Swalots as well with the Ice Beam. Now looking at the matchup, it does beat Azumarill, the Eradicate and the Drapion. It does say it loses to the Umbreon over here, but if we look at Battle Pokey, I just ran a simulator here. It actually does beat the Umbreon based on this simulator. So some testing will need to be done. So I'll be running some tests to show you guys as well. Then lastly, we have the Alolan Raticate, and the reason why I picked Raticate, Venusaur and Golbat is because they have access to the second charge move just for 10,000 Stardust. So it's going to be easily accessible for a lot of people. The Raticate has pretty good base stat, as you can see, and the moves are not bad as well. You have access to 2 double normal moves and majority of the field. You're going to be able to do neutral damage to majority of the field. It is going to go down against Toxicroak really quick, so you just got to be really careful on how you use the Eradicate. So there you have it. Those are my top 10. Hopefully you have enjoyed this and found this information helpful. Do share with me what your team is going to look like or what Pokemon you might be using, and we can have a discussion about that. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and until next time, good luck for the tournament.